The 10 unacceptable behaviors Carl Jung warns us never to tolerate. Part 1. Emotional manipulation, disguised as love. Introduction. What if I told you that the deepest wounds in your heart aren't from betrayal or loss, but from everything you chose to tolerate in the name of love? Not because you were weak, but because at some point you were convinced that enduring pain meant you cared, that staying silent meant you were kind, that forgiving endlessly made you strong. But what if that wasn't love? What if it was emotional manipulation hidden in the mask of affection? Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in modern psychology, didn't just analyze the human mind, he gave us tools to liberate it. He taught that what you do not make conscious will rule your life, and you will call it fate. And perhaps you've called emotional abuse a relationship. You've called control care. You've called neglect independence. But now is the time to unlearn. This first chapter peels back the curtain on emotional manipulation, the first and most deceptive behavior Jung would tell us to never tolerate. And as you watch, listen, or read, remember, this isn't about judgment, it's about liberation. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Emotional manipulation, disguised as love. It always starts subtly. A sigh when you speak your truth, a look of disappointment when you assert a boundary, a shift in tone that makes you question if you did something wrong. Again, emotional manipulation doesn't scream. It whispers. It hides in everyday moments and calls itself love. You start shrinking, not because they asked you to, but because the consequences of being full of you feel too high. You censor your voice, soften your steps, minimize your joy, and explain your pain in small, digestible pieces so they won't walk away. Jung's perspective. Carl Jung spoke frequently about the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that holds the pieces we repress, deny, or disown. When someone manipulates you emotionally, they are often projecting their own shadow onto you. They use guilt, fear, or obligation to control your behavior without appearing overtly abusive. They might say, "After everything I've done for you, you're too sensitive. I just want what's best for you." But behind these words is a silent contract. Suppress your needs or you'll lose me. That's not love. That's emotional blackmail. Real life story, Maya's dilemma. Maya, a successful creative director, found herself constantly drained in her relationship with Leo. He never hit her. He never shouted. But every time she spoke her truth, he withdrew affection. When she cried, he called her dramatic. When she expressed a need, he accused her of being selfish. She stayed for 4 years. Because when it was good, it was enchanting, and when it was bad, it was her fault, or so she believed. It wasn't until Maya started therapy that she realized Leo didn't love her. He loved the version of her who made no demands, who bent until she broke. The psychology behind it, emotional manipulation, is often rooted in unresolved trauma. Manipulators fear abandonment, rejection, or exposure. So instead of addressing their fears, they control their environment, namely you. They reward compliance with affection. They punish dissent with distance. This dynamic creates a psychological prison. You're not chained by violence. You're bound by confusion, guilt, and hope. You keep trying to earn back a love that disappears every time you act like your true self. Reflection, questions. When was the last time you said yes when you meant no? Who in your life makes you feel guilty for simply having needs? Have you ever confused tension with passion? Jungian, truth. Carl Jung reminds us that the unconscious will repeat what we do not heal. If we were emotionally manipulated in childhood through conditional love, guilt, or shame, we're likely to recreate those patterns in adulthood, often without knowing. But awareness is power. The awakening moment, it comes like a whisper first. A small voice inside you says, "This doesn't feel right." Maybe you ignore it. Maybe you rationalize it. But over time, that whisper becomes a roar. You wake up one morning and realize you don't recognize yourself. That's when change begins. How to break free. Name the behavior. Don't sugarcoat it. If it feels like manipulation, name it. Give it words. Reclaim your voice. Start by honoring your smallest no. Speak it, even if your voice shakes. Set micro boundaries. You don't have to leave today. Start by saying, "I need time to think," or "I'm not comfortable with that." Seek support. Therapy, support groups, or even a friend who sees you clearly can be lifelines. Build a new inner contract. Tell yourself, "I no longer trade authenticity for acceptance." Closing insight. Emotional manipulation is not just a relationship issue, it's a soul issue. It fractures your self-trust and disconnects you from your truth. But you're not here to be molded. You're here to be seen. Carl Jung didn't want you to live a half-life. He wanted you to integrate every part of you, light and dark, and become whole. And that wholeness begins with this. You are allowed to choose love that feels like freedom, not fear. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to begin again. Part 2. Control, disguised as protection. You've probably heard it before. "I'm just looking out for you. This is for your own good. I know what's best." At first, it feels like care. You feel seen, important, protected. But over time, the warmth fades and what's left is a quiet suffocation. Control doesn't always look like anger or abuse. Sometimes it looks like love wrapped in chains. Carl Jung understood this well. He saw how power, when not integrated, turns into domination. He said that the desire to control others is often a projection of one's inability to manage their own chaos. Jungian insight, power as a shadow projection. Jung defined power as one of the greatest shadows of the human psyche. When someone can't confront their own fears, anxieties, or vulnerabilities, they project them outward, trying to fix or control someone else instead. In this distorted logic, control becomes a defense mechanism against their internal disorder, but to the person on the receiving end, It doesn't feel like protection. It feels like isolation. Real life story. Daniel and his father. Daniel was 24 when he started dating. His father, a retired military man, insisted on approving every person he met. He called it just being a responsible parent. But every time Daniel brought someone home, his father found something wrong. She's too loud. He looks like trouble. They don't respect you. Eventually, Daniel stopped dating. He believed his father was right, that no one was good enough. But deep down, he felt something else. Emptiness. Control dressed as protection had robbed him of his agency. In therapy, Daniel learned to distinguish genuine care from masked fear. His father wasn't protecting him. He was protecting himself from losing control, from facing the fear that his son might choose a life he couldn't understand. Signs of control disguised as care. You're discouraged from making decisions without consulting the other. Your autonomy is slowly minimized in the name of safety. You feel anxious when making independent choices. They say it's because they love you too much. Reflection. Questions. Who in your life tends to speak for you or over you? Do you feel trusted in your relationships? Have you been taught that love means obedience? How to respond to this pattern. Assert healthy autonomy. Start small. Choose something that affects only you and make that decision independently. Communicate clearly. I appreciate your concern, but I need to learn from my own choices. Redefine respect. Love is not proven by submission. Respect is not proven by silence. Seek empowering relationships. Surround yourself with people who support your growth, even when it means letting you fall. Closing insight. Control wrapped in affection is still control. It keeps you in a state of dependency, stunts your confidence, and quietly convinces you that you can't live without their guidance. But you can. Carl Jung believed that true love is freedom, not bondage. Real protection doesn't cage, it equips. It doesn't limit, it empowers. And if someone truly loves you, they won't fear your wings. They'll help you fly. You are not here to be someone's project. You are here to live your truth. Part 3. Chronic invalidations and the death of empathy. There's a moment you'll never forget, not because it was loud, but because it was silent. You opened up, maybe about something small, maybe about something that cracked you in half. And the response? A shrug, a joke, a dismissal, a complete absence of emotional recognition. That's what chronic invalidation looks like, and it's one of the most corrosive experiences a human being can endure. Jung's lens, the destruction of empathy. Carl Jung believed that empathy was a bridge between souls. Without it, all human connection becomes transactional. He taught that genuine empathy requires vulnerability, presence, and the ability to sit with another's pain without turning away. But when someone chronically invalidates you, they break that bridge over and over until eventually you stop trying to cross. You stop sharing. You stop trusting. You begin to believe your emotions are a burden. And when that belief takes root, it's not just the relationship that suffers. Your entire sense of self starts to fracture. Story: The invisible grief of Elena. Elena lost her younger brother in a car accident. She turned to her partner for support. But his response was mechanical. Well, there's nothing you can do now. When she cried a few days later, he rolled his eyes. Still crying? You have to move on. Each time she expressed sorrow, he became more distant. Eventually, Elena learned to cry alone, but with every tear, she felt herself disappear a little more. The impact of invalidation, self-doubt. You question if your feelings are even real. Emotional numbness. You suppress feelings to avoid shame or rejection, anxiety, and hypervigilance. You start editing yourself before speaking. Isolation. You retreat from connection, believing no one truly understands. Common phrases that signal invalidation. You're overreacting. It's not that bad. Other people have it worse. You're too emotional. Here we go again. Each phrase says the same thing. Your experience doesn't matter. Jungian concept, the anima/animus wound. Jung spoke of the anima, inner feminine, and animus, inner masculine, within all of us. Chronic invalidation often wounds the anima, the receptive, emotional, intuitive part of the psyche. Over time, that internal feminine voice grows quieter, disconnected, exiled. We become strangers to our own feelings. Reflection. Questions. When did you first learn your feelings were too much? Who do you hide your tears from and why? What emotion are you most afraid to express? The cost of losing empathy. A relationship without empathy is like a body without breath. It can look alive from the outside, but inside everything is shutting down. And worse, when you're invalidated long enough, you may start invalidating others too. That's how trauma becomes legacy. But you can interrupt that legacy. How to reclaim empathy and self-worth. Feel without justification. Your feelings don't need approval. They need expression. Surround yourself with validating voices. Choose friends, therapists, or mentors who say, I see you, I believe you. Speak the unspeakable. Name your pain. Write it. Say it. Sing it. Paint it. Let it be real. Validate others. What you give becomes stronger in you. Empathy expands when shared. Healing insight. Carl Jung wrote, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. If you've lived with invalidation, you know that feeling all too well, but the truth is, you deserve to be met, not minimized. Your sadness is not drama. Your anger is not a flaw. Your emotional world is sacred territory. Let no one desecrate it again. Part 4. Jealousy, disguised as passion. At first, it felt flattering. They wanted to know where you were, who you were with, what time you got home. They held your hand tightly in public. They made their presence known. It's because they love me so much, you thought. But soon, the questions turned into interrogations. The affection became surveillance. The passion turned into possession. And somewhere along the way, love became a cage. Jung's insight, possession is not passion. Carl Jung warned us that what we fail to understand about ourselves, we project onto others. Jealousy, at its core, is not about the other person. It's about unhealed insecurity, fear of abandonment, and inner chaos we have yet to integrate. When someone disguises their jealousy as passion, they are often masking deep inner wounds. Instead of facing those wounds, they try to control you, as if love could be kept on a leash. But love is not a hostage situation, and passion that hurts is not passion. It's panic in disguise. Real-life story, Sophia and Marcos. Sophia loved how Marcos made her feel. At first, he was magnetic, attentive, affectionate, even protective. But within months, that protection felt more like a trap. He questioned her clothing. He called 5 times a day. He showed up unannounced. And every time she asked for space, he guilt-tripped her. Why are you pushing me away if you love me? Sophia began hiding things, not because she was doing something wrong, but because she was trying to preserve her peace. It wasn't until a close friend confronted her that she realized Marcos wasn't passionate. He was possessive, and it was choking the life out of her. The psychological roots of jealousy insecurity, a belief that one is not lovable or worthy, fear of abandonment, unresolved childhood experiences of being left or neglected, low self-esteem, the assumption that others will always find someone better. When these wounds go unaddressed, jealousy becomes chronic. And when it's framed as passion, it gets romanticized. But Jung taught us to look deeper. What is this person trying to control? And what does that say about what they fear losing? Signs. Jealousy is being masked as passion. They constantly check your phone or ask for passwords. They isolate you from friends and family for your own good. They say, "I can't help it. I love you too much." They become angry or cold if you talk to someone of the opposite sex. Reflection. Questions. Has someone ever made you feel guilty for setting healthy boundaries? Do you associate jealousy with love? Have you ever minimized controlling behavior because it felt romantic? Breaking the pattern. De-romanticize jealousy. Understand it's not love. It's a wound demanding healing. Speak up early. The first time you feel controlled, address it. Don't wait until it escalates. Reinforce autonomy. Love is a choice, not a command. Choose relationships where freedom is celebrated. Heal your own wounds. If you find yourself jealous, ask, what am I afraid of? And is that fear even mine to carry? Jungian healing insight. Jung often said, where love rules, there is no will to power. Jealousy is the will to power, dressed in longing. It is the shadow attempting to dominate what it cannot understand. But your soul cannot breathe where it's being watched, corrected, or interrogated. It thrives where it's trusted. Part 5. Sarcasm as a weapon. Relax, I'm just joking. You've heard it before. After a comment that stung, after a dig that hit too close to the bone, the person laughs and expects you to do the same. But deep down, you don't feel amused. You feel small. That's the thing about sarcasm. It wears a smile, but it wounds like a knife. Carl Jung's insight. The shadow speaks in sarcasm. Jung believed that what we repress doesn't vanish. It finds another way to speak. Often, that voice emerges as sarcasm. It's anger dressed as humor. It's insecurity pretending to be clever. It's resentment seeking camouflage. When someone repeatedly uses sarcasm as their main form of communication, it's rarely just about being witty. It's often a sign of emotional cowardice, the inability to confront real feelings head-on. Real-life story, Jonah's silent wounds. Jonah grew up in a family where everything was a joke. If he cried, he was told, "Here come the waterworks." If he got excited, they'd say, "Calm down, you're not that special." As an adult, he found himself doing the same. He couldn't express affection without teasing. He couldn't admit hurt without sarcasm. One day, his partner finally said, "I don't know when you're being serious. I just know I don't feel safe." It hit him like a thunderbolt. He had become what wounded him. Psychology of sarcasm as defense, avoidance of vulnerability. It's easier to joke than to admit fear or pain. Passive aggression, expressing resentment indirectly when direct confrontation feels threatening. Power play, using sarcasm to assert dominance or belittle without accountability. Jung would call this an unintegrated shadow, a wounded self hiding behind humor, afraid of being truly seen. Signs that sarcasm is being used as a weapon. Jokes are consistently at your expense. You feel confused, humiliated, or belittled afterward. The person blames you for not having a sense of humor. Sarcasm is used in serious conversations as deflection. Reflection? Questions. Who uses humor in your life to avoid real intimacy? Have you ever laughed to cover pain or embarrassment? Are there wounds you've hidden beneath sarcasm? Steps to disarm sarcasm's power. Call it out kindly. That felt more hurtful than funny. Can we talk seriously? Set boundaries. Let people know joking about certain topics is off limits. Model direct communication. Share your feelings honestly. Invite others to do the same. Explore the shadow. In yourself or others, ask, what's not being said beneath the joke? Jungian. Reflection. Carl Jung believed the path to healing is through integration, not denial. Sarcasm, when chronic and cutting, reveals a split within the self. Healing comes when we stop hiding pain in punchlines, because beneath every sarcastic jab might be a truth that's aching to be seen. You deserve words that uplift, not words that sting, eh? You deserve relationships where clarity replaces confusion. Part 6. Guilt tripping as emotional control. It starts with a sigh, a disappointed look, a silent treatment. Not a scream, but a quiet pressure that seeps into your skin and makes you feel responsible for someone else's emotions. You don't care about me after all I've done for you. If you really loved me, you would. Guilt tripping doesn't force you. It convinces you. It's not about what's said. It's about how it makes you feel, obligated, small, and selfish for simply having needs. Jungian view. Emotional projection as manipulation. Carl Jung spoke at length about projection. Guilt tripping is often the unconscious projection of one's own unmet needs or unresolved wounds onto another. When someone uses guilt to control, they are outsourcing their emotional responsibility. Instead of processing their emotions, they make you responsible for managing them. Story: Leah and her mother. Leah's mother always made her feel like she owed her. When Leah wanted to move abroad for work, her mother said, "I guess I'll just be alone forever. Don't worry about me." When Leah missed a weekend call due to a deadline, she received a message. "It's okay. I know you have more important things." Leah felt torn between her dreams and her duty, her freedom and her guilt. Every step toward independence felt like betrayal. Only through therapy did Leah begin to understand her mother's pain wasn't hers to fix. Her love didn't require self-erasure. The mechanics of guilt-tripping victim positioning. The manipulator assumes a helpless or wounded stance to trigger your empathy. Emotional withholding. Love or affection is withdrawn until you comply. Conditional approval. You're only good when you sacrifice or submit. Common phrases that signal guilt-based control. "You're the only one I have. I would never treat you like this. I guess I just don't matter to you. Wow. Thanks for making me feel invisible." These aren't just words. They're levers designed to make you question yourself. Reflection. Questions. Have you ever felt bad for doing something that brought you joy? Who in your life makes you feel responsible for their moods? Do you say yes out of love or out of fear of guilt? Healing and boundary work. Identify emotional debt. Where do you feel you owe people emotionally? Who told you that? Reclaim autonomy. You are allowed to prioritize your well-being without guilt. Communicate firmly and kindly. I care about you, but I won't make decisions from guilt. Don't justify your joy. You're allowed to be happy without having to explain it. Jung's wisdom on guilt and authenticity. Jung taught that guilt is often a sign of inner conflict between the persona, who we think we should be, and the self, who we truly are. Guilt tripping weaponizes this conflict. It keeps you stuck in the role you've outgrown, but your evolution is not a betrayal. You are not here to earn love through sacrifice. You are here to live fully, honestly, and with integrity to your inner truth. Part 7. The fear of losing you as a method of control. If you leave, I'll fall apart. I can't live without you. You're my everything. Don't ever leave me. At first, these words might sound like the ultimate declaration of love. But listen closely. They are not about connection. They are about control. Carl Jung taught that what we cling to out of fear, we end up destroying. When someone's fear of losing you becomes the foundation of the relationship, it traps both of you in a cage of dependency. And that's not love. It's emotional blackmail. Jung's teaching, love without attachment. Jung believed that the goal of individuation is wholeness, not fusion. A truly whole individual does not fear your independence, they celebrate it. But someone who hasn't faced their own emotional void may use their fear of abandonment to dominate you under the guise of devotion. The more you grow, the more threatened they feel. The more you shine, the more they panic. Because your light reminds them of their own shadow. Real-life story. Brandon and Ava. Brandon met Ava when he was going through a rough patch. She was radiant, independent, and emotionally stable. He said she saved him. But as the relationship grew, so did his anxiety. He began needing constant reassurance. Do you still love me? You're not going to leave me, right? Promise me you'll never change. Ava, out of compassion, complied until she felt like she was babysitting his emotions. When she tried to pull back, Brandon panicked. He threatened to hurt himself if she ever left. Ava realized he didn't love her. He depended on her to regulate his inner chaos. And she was slowly losing herself. The signs of control rooted in fear. You feel guilty for needing space or alone time. They respond to your growth with insecurity or sabotage. They threaten emotional collapse if you assert boundaries. You feel more like a caretaker than a partner. Reflection questions. Has anyone ever made you feel selfish for growing or changing? Do you feel emotionally responsible for someone else's stability? Are you afraid to disappoint someone who depends on you too much? From dependency to autonomy, recognize emotional entanglement. Love doesn't mean merging identities. If you feel like your existence is someone else's anchor, it's time to reflect. Say no without explaining. Boundaries aren't betrayals. They're necessities. Encourage self-responsibility. It's not your job to save anyone from their own growth process. Detach with compassion. You can love someone and still walk away. Compassion doesn't mean sacrifice. Jung's wisdom on projection in Love Jung often wrote that when we project our unlived lives onto another, we imprison both them and ourselves. A person who fears losing you often hasn't cultivated their own identity. They see you not as a partner, but as their lifeline. But you are not here to carry anyone. You are here to walk beside them. Part 8. The normalization of indifference. There's a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors. It just doesn't answer your messages. It forgets your birthday. It looks away when you cry. Indifference is not absence of emotion. It is the weaponized withdrawal of it. And when you live inside it long enough, you start to think, maybe this is just how love is. But it's not. Carl Jung and the shadow of apathy. Jung described the shadow as not only our hidden rage or fear, but also our disconnection. Indifference is the manifestation of a psychic shutdown. The person may not yell or strike, but their coldness wounds the soul. Why? Because humans are wired to feel, to connect, to be seen. When your emotional bids are repeatedly ignored, your nervous system starts to adapt by going numb. But numb is not peace. It's survival. Real-life story, Natalie's quiet heartbreak. Natalie's partner never cheated. He never raised his voice. But he never asked how her day was. Never noticed when she was overwhelmed. Never reached for her hand. At first, she made excuses. He's just tired. He shows love differently. But years went by, and she felt like a ghost in her own home, visible, but never truly seen. Her laughter faded, her creativity dulled, until one morning she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She realized indifference is a slow erosion, and she was disappearing. Signs of normalized indifference. You feel lonely even when they're in the room. Important life events pass without acknowledgement. You stop sharing your emotions because they won't care. You constantly make excuses for their lack of engagement. Reflection. Questions. Have you mistaken emotional absence for emotional stability? When was the last time you felt emotionally nourished in your relationship? Are you more afraid of being alone or staying invisible? Steps to reawaken your emotional truth. Acknowledge the void. Stop minimizing what you're missing. It matters. Reignite your inner spark. Do things that make you feel alive, even if you must do them alone. Voice your needs clearly. I need presence. I need attention. I need engagement. Make peace with unmet needs. If they can't meet you, you don't have to stay stuck hoping they will. Jung's wisdom, emotional integrity over illusion. Jung said, loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Indifference silences that communication. It kills intimacy in slow motion. And yet, it's one of the most accepted forms of emotional neglect. But love is not made of silence. It's made of presence. You deserve to feel chosen, not tolerated. You deserve to be celebrated, not ignored. You deserve to be deeply, consciously loved. Part 9. Emotional withholding as punishment. They don't shout. They don't argue. They just shut down. They stop answering. They avoid eye contact. They withhold affection, attention, or kindness until you fold, until you apologize, until you beg for their warmth again. This isn't maturity. This isn't emotional regulation. This is punishment, and it's as damaging as any raised voice. Jung's perspective, manipulation through withdrawal. Carl Jung explored how people use both aggression and repression to control relationships. Emotional withholding is a passive-aggressive form of dominance. It creates a power imbalance where one person becomes the gatekeeper of emotional safety. In Jungian terms, This behavior reflects a split psyche, one that hasn't integrated its anger and instead weaponizes coldness. Real-life story. Kareem and the Cold War. Kareem always knew when he upset his partner, not because she told him, but because she disappeared emotionally. No more "I love you," no more jokes, laughter, or gentle touch. Just silence. If he asked what was wrong, she'd say, "Nothing." But everything about her screamed punishment. Eventually, Kareem realized their entire relationship was based on compliance. Whenever he had a need or a differing opinion, he paid for it in emotional starvation. The silent weapon. How withholding works affection becomes transactional. Emotional warmth is used to reward obedience. Withdrawal creates anxiety and self-blame in the other person. Power is maintained through ambiguity. It's a form of control dressed in emotional distance, and its silence can be louder than any scream. Reflection. Questions. Have you ever felt like you had to earn someone's love back? Are you walking on eggshells, afraid of triggering withdrawal? Have you mistaken this pattern for someone needing space when it's actually manipulation? Breaking free from the freeze. Identify the pattern. Not all silence is abusive, but when silence equals punishment, it's a red flag. Communicate your boundaries. I notice you stop engaging when there's conflict. That hurts me, and I won't continue a relationship based on that. Don't chase validation. Their coldness is not a reflection of your worth. Refuse emotional ransom. You don't have to shrink to be loved again. Love isn't conditional on submission. Jungian insight. Repression breeds manipulation. When someone cannot handle conflict healthily, they retreat, not to reflect, but to retaliate. Jung believed the repression of true feeling leads to distorted expressions of power. Emotional withholding is one such distortion. True healing invites expression, not suppression, and true love invites presence, not punishment. Part 10. The betrayal of your intuition. There's a voice inside you. You've heard it. It speaks in stillness and chills down your spine in the way your stomach twists when something's off. That's your intuition, the ancient quiet wisdom you were born with. And perhaps the greatest betrayal you can experience is being convinced to silence it. Jung and the voice. Within Carl Jung, viewed intuition as one of the fundamental psychological functions. It's the language of the unconscious, the guide that helps us navigate what logic cannot explain. But in a toxic relationship, intuition is the first casualty. You are told you're imagining things. You're too sensitive, too paranoid, too dramatic. You're taught to trust their version of reality over your own. And so, you disconnect from yourself to stay connected to them. Real-life story. Danny's disconnection. Danny always felt something wasn't right. Her partner would change stories, dodge questions, hide his phone. When she asked, he accused her of not trusting him. When she pulled back, he flooded her with affection. And each time she questioned her gut, he'd say, "You're crazy. You overthink everything." Eventually, Danny stopped asking. She stopped feeling. She stopped hearing herself. Until one day, she saw a message she wasn't supposed to see, and everything unraveled. But the pain wasn't just about betrayal. It was about all the time she had betrayed herself to keep the peace. The psychological pattern, gaslighting, and self-abandonment. When someone repeatedly denies your perception, your reality starts to blur. This is gaslighting. Over time, it conditions you to ignore your body, your instincts, your inner truth. Jung warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. In a toxic dynamic, they'll ask you to avoid yours too. Reflection. Questions. When was the last time you knew something was wrong but stayed silent? What parts of your truth have you edited to make someone else comfortable? What would your life look like if you trusted yourself fully again? Reclaiming your inner compass. Validate your senses. The body doesn't lie. Notice your reactions. Tightness, chills, fatigue, they're all messengers. Keep a reality journal. When you sense something off, write it down. Over time, patterns emerge. Practice micro-truths. Start telling small truths out loud, even if they're awkward or inconvenient. Remove those who mute you. If someone constantly undermines your voice, they don't belong near your spirit. Jung's final gift. Wholeness through truth. Jung believed the soul longs for wholeness, not perfection. And wholeness begins when we return to ourselves. When we reclaim the voice we were told to doubt. When we honor our intuition not as a luxury, but as a necessity. You were not wrong. You were not crazy. You were not too much. You were wise. You are wise. And your truth deserves to be lived loudly, boldly, and unapologetically. Conclusion. Returning to the self. This is not just about the 10 behaviors you must never tolerate. This is about returning to the most sacred truth. You. Carl Jung taught that our task is not to become perfect, but whole. And wholeness begins when you say, I deserve to be treated with care. My feelings are valid. My boundaries matter. My intuition is real. No one gets to define your worth. No one gets to rewrite your reality. You are no longer available for manipulation, silence, shame, or punishment. You are available for love that nourishes, for peace that heals, and for truth that liberates. This video was never just about red flags. It was about redemptive clarity. And if you've made it this far, it means one thing. You're already waking up. Now, trust yourself enough to never fall back asleep.